Continuing previewing the 2026 Sun Belt baseball season, we talk to the newest of head coaches in the Sun Belt, Ford Pemberton with the ULM Warhawks. Next on Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we continue our baseball preview. We had Mike Silva from Arkansas State yesterday. We got Ford Pemberton, first time being a head coach, longtime assistant in high school and then in college. And this is his first opportunity with the ULM Warhawks. We do talk to about his style. What can we expect from him as the Warhawks coach? And, his relationship with SJ Tuohy, right? Because Ford got hired before the AD did. So he got hired before his boss did, and they both seem to be on the same page. We talk about the portal and NIL and competing in the Sun Belt, and where do you get a first name like Ford? We talk about it all. He is the head coach of the ULM Warhawks. He is Ford Pemberton, and he is Locked On Sun Belt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. We're going to start previewing the upcoming Sun Belt baseball season. It is the one sport, maybe along with softball, so there's two sports that can get more than one bid into the NCAA tournament. So we know how important Sun Belt baseball is to the fans in the conference. We bring in the newest coach in the Sun Belt. He is Ford Pemberton. He is the new head man over there at ULM. Coach, thanks very much for hopping on, and congratulations on your first head coaching job, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's been, it was a quick transition. Had to hit the ground running. I had to live in my office here for about a month, and it was, I enjoyed every minute of it. I love sitting in this chair. I love our staff that we were able to put together, and it's been great. We're ready to get going.
So back in my minor league days, I had met somebody very early on that him and his friend put together kind of a guide on how to either start a new baseball team or what they would do when they became a general manager, which ended up happening actually to both of them. Did you have a little book to guide you do this? You went from baseball coach to assistant college baseball coach. How do you, what was the game plan? What was the first moves that you were doing when they said, Ford, do you want the job? After you said yes.
Well, I had relationship with the former staff. I knew Fed, I knew the assistants, really good baseball coaches, really good men. And so Brandon Belanger, who I ended up retaining, and that was my first bullet point to check off, was to retain him. And so I went over to his house that night and immediately started going over the roster, who was in the portal, who wasn't, just finding as much information as I could, and then immediately figure out what we need to start doing. Start filling this roster. I believe there was 26 players in the portal. We had 7 freshmen coming in. I didn't know anything about them, but I was going to honor their offer or whatever it was and bring them in. And so just getting as much information as I could. I had an idea of the staff I wanted to put together, just multiple names on each position of what I wanted and how I wanted to do this. And so just kind of looking at it from a aerial view of what all needs to be covered. I don't know if there's a book anymore in this day of age of how you put the team. It's just so different. You know what I mean? Every case is different when you take over a program. Sometimes you don't have a lot of players in the portal, whatever it may be. And so, you had to look at it. You had to be flexible. You had to have, backup plans if something didn't go the way you wanted, and just, being able to, communicate with the staff, communicate with players. My first day, I remember waking up, I believe I got the job on a Tuesday. I woke up Wednesday morning at 4:30, not because I was trying to, but my eyes opened and I said, all right, I remember thinking to myself, I'm in charge of 50 people right now. I've got to get up and get going. And I talked to every player that day that was in the portal. And we just started, stacking days of what we needed to do to get this thing, headed in the direction that we wanted.
When you say every player, you mean your players in the portal?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. Every every Warhawk player that had jumped into the portal. So I immediately got in contact with them. And then obviously, the guys that weren't, I talked to them as well. And the next day was the incoming player, like the freshmen that were coming, and any player that they had signed that spring.
Were you able to retain any of the players that were?
Yeah, we retained it. We retained a pretty good bit. It was calling them, and it was simply, listen, let me talk first, just so you can see who you're talking to and what I'm about, because I wanted a lot of these guys back, so I didn't want there to be any type of I don't know if fake is the word, but if they talk first, I could possibly manipulate this thing and agree with everything they're saying and get them back. But I just thought the genuine thing to do was to lay out our plans for player development, not necessarily comparing anything in the past, or just, this is what we're going to do, this is what I value, this is what your week would look like. This is who I'm looking at for, or this is who I'm bringing with me. This is what I want in the weight room. We're going to have a dietitian. All this stuff was already planned to be put in place. And, I think the response went well. Some guys, it wasn't going to work out. Some guys, I don't think it was a great fit for them to come back. And so we handled that as well. But it was, it was a long day on the phone.
Seems like that book is slightly fluid,
yes.
Not only from year to year, but what's going on right now is day to day and hour to hour.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, I tell our staff all the time, not relative to just recruiting and stuff, but you can't coach out of a textbook. If you're coaching out of a textbook, if you're doing something, October 15th, just because you did it October 15th last year, you're missing out on your current club. You're not seeing what they need right now. So it's constantly fluid. Definitely no textbook for, I don't think, anything right now.
We're talking with Ford Pemberton, new head coach of the ULM Warhawks. All right, not to give anything away, because right now you actually have the advantage. You may know how the other guys coach compared to what you guys coach. But how do you go about it, right? How much are we into analytics? Are we waiting around for a 3-run home run? Are we running? Everyone wants pitching and defense. That seems to be baseball 101. But, what kind of coach and what kind of coach can ULM Warhawk fans expect here in 2026 and moving forward?
Well, we just want a club that does what the game asks them to do. We have to figure out how to play good baseball, right? I just want good baseball being played. I'd like an adaptable team that understands, like, listen, this is how we're going to have to win a 3-2 game on a Friday night, or a 2-1 game. You got some really good arms going. Saturday, you might have to figure out how to win an 8-7 game. You might have to, figure out how to hold on to a 9-4 lead. You jump up early and you win that thing when that team throws a final punch. Or how do you make a big comeback? How do you win a sloppy game with errors all over the place? How do you win with the wind blowing in? If we can create and just, teach our guys adaptability and winning, that's what we're striving for. So the identity of this team so far, I think they've done a really good job of just understanding the pace in which we want to play. I want presence and tempo on the mound, the things that we control, the way we, hard running, out of the box, hunting the free 90s, the hard 90 to first, just good baseball. It's just it's such a unique sport, right? And so, understanding how to win, and then understanding, playing to a standard, not the circumstances, not affected by failure or success, just a one-pitch mentality. And, so far, I think these guys have done a really good job. A coach on my staff, Ryan Schatzberger, he's been a head coach at the Division I level for 6 years, and he made a comment to me early fall. He said, look, man, this is going to be your toughest fall. And this is how he's so valuable, having a head coach on staff. This is going to be your toughest fall. You're not just teaching in between the lines. It's, how we're going to carry ourselves, just how we want to go in and out of the building and what we're doing in the weight room. You're teaching more than just in between the lines. So I remember installing some base running stuff, and was just, I caught myself telling myself, like, I've got to be patient. I don't have one returner out here. I don't have one player on this field that was with me last year, helping me teach or install. And so, as you get going, I don't know if you build so much of a culture or program anymore as much as 1 year teams. And then, you're back to square one at the end of the season, which is fine. I'm not complaining about it. But, you have to understand, when you kind of get some returners in your system, the install of stuff gets a little bit easier and a little bit better.
So it does sound like you're building a culture, but it also sounds like, compared to like a head football coach, you're actually coaching, right? Head football coaches seem to be more CEO. Baseball, you're teaching guys how to run the bases. And then maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but it seems like you want to play with smart aggressiveness. Like, if we get thrown out trying to, scratch a double out of a single, maybe pay attention, but not the worst thing in the world because, we're making the other team make a play.
Yeah, well, I just, we want aggression, but I want smart players as well. And it's simply, to your point of the coaching and the 1 year, how can you get it? It's all about how can you figure out this August group, okay? And you get them on board and on the same page as much as you can all the way through the end of November, right? And then they go home for 6 weeks and you're not around them. And then how do you get them back? You already kind of have them right here. Well, how do you get them right back here in January? And you keep building and see how you can peak in May. And then and that's what it is. And you're back to square one and you're back in there filling pieces of what you need. And it's just, every program in the country is going through that right now. So, on the baseball side of things, how do you adapt to that? Well, for me, I wanted us to simplify our terminology. I wanted everything to align, whether it's cuts and relays or leads at bases or our terminology on the field. How can I simplify that for if we lose a group of players, a bigger group of players, maybe than, compared to what you would do 8 years ago, right? How does someone step right in and keep going? And so I think that's the adaptability, or, guys adapting to the coaches, adapting to the landscape of today. But, listen, I love getting a group. I feel like that's one of my strong suits as a coach, just kind of self-reflecting and talking to our staff is, just getting people on the same page, quickly with effective teaching, effective communication, and, getting everyone rowing in the same direction.
Let's take a time out. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with ULM Warhawks baseball coach Ford Pemberton about the hiring process. He seems to be aligned with SJ Tuohy, impressed with his marketing skills. And when can we expect him to have his team ready to go in terms of who's the starters on the mound and in the lineup? We talk about that next, right after you hear this message from Mazda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In Unrivaled, Miami felt the breeze as Paige Beckers powered the breeze to a 75-68 win over the Lunar Owls, finishing with 28 points and 7 assists. She was joined by 20-year-old Dominique Malunga, who added 21 points, 8 rebounds, and became just the second player to ever dunk in an unrivaled game. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's continue our conversation with the new head baseball coach of the ULM Warhawks, Ford Pemberton, talking to him about the hiring process and when he can expect to have his starters raring to go. Talking to Ford Pemberton, head coach of the ULM Warhawks. All right, let's talk about the hiring process because it was a little backwards just because of the way things went down and what happened last year. So you got hired, then your boss got hired, and I'm going to take a wild stab at this. You're older than your boss because he's younger than everybody else. All right, so talk about a little adaptability there. So how has that relationship grew? We had SJ Tuohy on, says he has all the faith and belief in you and that you're going to win. But that's a little, it was just done backwards because that's what the situation called for.
Yeah, well, on the baseball side, when the change was made early in the fall, it was just kind of, I had a really good relationship with Bryant Vincent, still do. And it was, you don't want to walk into his office on week 2 and he would drop whatever he was doing and talk to the coaches on campus of what he needed to do or what we needed to do while he was in the interim role. But, it kind of just like, hey, man, let's put our head down and do what we need to do. Nothing outside the lines right now is really going to affect this group of what we're trying to do, and then SJ, we're on the same page. He understands a lot what goes into, Division I athletics. He was in an operations role in the SEC. I think that's one of the best qualities about him on his path. He understands what, the student athlete experience should be, relative to everything, getting off the bus, hotel, traveling in the airport, pregame meals, postgame meals. He understands that people in the seats, your program, the players play better. So he understands marketing. I think right away you saw when he hopped on board, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I just saw our social media for basketball and media timeouts and everything, just take off. And that stuff is so important. And, some fundraising ideas of what he was doing. And it was just, he came right away punching people in the mouth in a good way of, this is the brand. We need you, we need your support. And so this is a city that will get behind you. This is a really good city, as you know, your time in the state. And this, and that's the great thing about this conference. I really love this conference. I really like the fan bases. If you just, not a lot of conferences have it as good as the Sun Belt, just from the travel, the fan support, the venues that we go and play in. I've played at UL Lafayette before. I've played at Southern Miss. They're on, they'll kill you during the game, then they'll feed you right after. That's a great quality. You couldn't ask for anything different. So I think it's really, I'm really excited for SJ, and we're on the same page with a lot of stuff. I know he's got a lot of stuff going on, but he'll, you shoot him a text, he responds right away. And he's been really good for us.
Yeah, I did notice that they hired a new soccer coach, which would have made it seem like they hired Nick Saban as their new soccer coach with all the social media and the pub that they were putting into it. So that's a little bit different than maybe things would be handled even 5 years ago.
Yeah, like I said, he just understands that, not that it was bad before, but he just brought in just a different punch to it, and he's not afraid to get on social media and interact. And, I think it's, healthy that he's got a big following, man. He's a rock star.
Yeah, he does. Well, he keeps that beard, so it looks like he's 40, because if he shaved, he would look like he's 25.
Right. Yeah.
Talking to Ford Pemberton, head coach of the ULM baseball team, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, so let's talk about the team. We'll talk about process first, and then maybe some specific players. How do you go about, I guess this is technically the preseason, to line up your team, and then how much do you use the out of conference to get ready for the conference? Like, when do you want to have, our weekend starters set? Maybe they are set coming out of practice, and maybe you're going to use the first month to get that ready for conference play. We'll take, injuries out of it, obviously. But what's that process like? When do you want to say, and maybe you already have your Friday night starter, maybe that's obvious, I don't know.
Well, I still want to see, we still have some very important preseason inter squads coming up. We're going to battle the weather a little bit this weekend and probably next week.
Please stay safe. Yes, they don't know how to drive in ice down in Bossier City,
right? No,
or in Monroe. Yeah.
I was explaining that to our team, like, hey, Thursday night, or I don't even know, 2 nights ago, I was just telling our guys, like, listen, you need to go to the store, get the, I was asking my wife, what do I need to tell them, to go up, and she's saying the essentials. I said, Sarah, these guys don't know the essentials. I got to be specific with them, bread and water and just preparing, right? Because I just said, look, boys,
hey,
Louisiana
frozen pizzas is the essential, if possible.
Yes, exactly. And so, I explained to our guys very clearly, like, listen, Louisiana, we don't handle ice very well. And so just be prepared, be proactive. Don't wait till the last minute to get what you need. Obviously, we're going to be in contact with those guys all through this. But back to your question, Dave, on the, I want to see the roles are, taking place a little bit. I still want to see us in a, we have, at the minimum, 8 more preseason inter squads where I can really lock in on these roles, because it's our job to put these guys in successful situations on the mound. And so I need to see that. And just as we get going, that'll kind of fall into place of what we need to do, relative to the schedule that you're talking. This team, we just, the Sun Belt is such a good conference, and you're in a dogfight every single weekend. And so obviously the preseason is valuable. We have 2 weekends at home, 2 on the road. What I liked what we did in the fall, we went and played Arkansas State. Weren't really worried about it being a conference opponent. Mike Silva, we have a good relationship, and I just said, listen, we'll come up there and play you. And I just, both of us wanted to see where we were relative to a conference opponent. And so it was good. It was a productive day. Both teams were shining in some spots, and it was very productive. And for us, I wanted every player to get on the bus. So you're pretty uncomfortable when there's 50 51 people on a 52 passenger bus. And I just wanted them to see how I want the hotel to operate. I had 2 student managers that are freshmen that this is their first taste of Division I baseball, where there's a lot to go into. Those managers are important. They can take a program and help elevate just by the way they provide for players. So I thought it was really good for their development to get in there and, how do we handle stuff with the hotel? How do we handle our team meeting room? Getting our laundry back from Arkansas State and putting it out for the players. It was so valuable. And then we played some pretty good baseball that day. I was happy with it. Hopped on the bus, came home, played one more exhibition 2 days later at home. And so it's Dave, it's stacking good days. We stay really process oriented here. I really don't look ahead at all. We don't talk about Omaha. We don't talk about winning Sun Belt championships. We stay in the moment. January 22nd today.
All right. So let's talk about that, because I came from a minor league pro background. And even in the big leagues, right? You just don't get that very rarely, outside of maybe opening day and after the All-Star break, the 2 aces lining up. But you do in college baseball. It's the same dudes every Friday night, every Saturday night, every Sunday, generally speaking. All right. And so the Friday night guy sets the tone. And sometimes, you're in for a battle with the guy on the opposing mound. But what I've learned is that everybody has a Friday night starter, and everybody guy can, throw 7, 2 hits, 1 run kind of ball game. And so that's just different than pro ball, because that guy is going up against the toughest guy on the opposing team every single time. And so that's not only a physical challenge, but a mental challenge.
Yeah. It's, you go into the game prepared with what especially on the offensive side of things. Those Friday night guys, typically in an AB, you might get 1 pitch to hit during an AB. Right. And as the weekend progresses, you might get 2 to 3 per AB on the Sunday, like you're seeing a lot. But the depth in the league on the mound is, obviously really good. But the biggest thing for us going in terms of thinking about pitching and pitching matchups, you have to understand, and this is where I trust Brady Cox and just us being on the same page. He's just he's so good at forward thinking and having a plan lined out. But you have to use your bullpen in a smart way, right? And so typically on Friday night, it's a race to who can get that pin moving first on the other side. But you have to be smart. You have to trust guys. You have to establish their roles. You have to know when to get them in, get them out. You have to know when to challenge a guy on the weekend. Maybe another appearance that he's not accustomed to, whatever it may be. You just have to be proactive on the front end. And then, like we mentioned earlier, not so much out of a textbook. You have to have some scenarios. Something might pop up that you weren't expecting. And so that's where I feel really comfortable with our staff. I have great baseball minds in our coaching staff room, guys with a lot of success, guys that play at high levels, guys that coach at high levels. And so, we're just going to put our heads together and, put our guys in position to be successful.
All right, let's take one more time out. We'll come back and wrap up things with the new head coach of the ULM Warhawks, Ford Pemberton, where he got his first name from. Interesting first name. And who has impressed him so far as they get ready for the 2026 season. We'll do that after I tell you about Game Time and FanDuel. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has been a go-to app for scoring tickets fast, without the hassle. Puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You can pull up the Game Time app, pick up an upcoming NBA game, and you can get tickets locked in within minutes. Love seeing the all-in price up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Being able to see the view from my seat before buying the tickets made the decision easy. And you got the zone deals. They stood out. Choose the section. Game Time picks the seats, and you can save. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, locked on, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get on the action before the NFL season officially comes to close. This is Super Bowl 60. And FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, the Seahawks, riding with the underdog, the Patriots, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everybody's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's a perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with the new head baseball coach of the ULM Warhawks, Ford Pemberton, talking about his name, which is pretty cool, and who he has been impressed with so far this season, and some interesting coaching advice that he seemed to have and was given, and I like the way he's doing things with his team. He is the head coach of the ULM Warhawks baseball team in his first year as a head coach. He is Ford Pemberton, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Talking to Ford Pemberton, new head baseball coach with the ULM Warhawks, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to ask you one quick question off topic. How do you get a first name Ford? Is that a family name? Is someone like a car? How do we come up with the first name Ford?
No, Ford is my mom's maiden name. So
she
she grew up in Lake Charles. Her name was Tanya Ford. And, I got stuck with it. My son is John Ford.
Not stuck.
Yeah.
Not stuck.
Yeah. No, but it's, I like it.
Everybody's named David.
Right. Yeah. My dad's name's David Pemberton. So
there you go. All right. So everybody's named David, Yeah. No one's
that's
named
how I got
Ford.
the name Ford. Yeah.
All right. So that's a cool first name. All right. So can you give us a couple of players who have looked good so far this spring, if we want to call it spring? Not quite yet, but heading into the season, who have stood out, who have impressed you so far?
I would say, if you kind of break it down into returners, guys that have been here, been really, really happy, really impressed, very proud of Marcus Aranda. He came in here early fall, maybe the first week we were back, second week, and we had a man-to-man, one-on-one conversation, and he responded, and he is taking control of his career. His body looks better than ever. The pitchers love throwing to him. He had a really good fall. He had a really good day at Arkansas State. He's been so professional. I'm very proud of him. He didn't have the year that he hadn't had the career that he's wanted to have here at ULM, but he's been great. He's been a leader for us. And he just plays like a veteran, just a veteran catcher, stands in there. You can tell he's a catcher, and he's been phenomenal. Bryce Blaser has been really good for us, leading, just kind of showing guys the way, showing guys how to work. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. Just a West Coast player. And so, I love the fact that Bryce loves ULM, and he wants to see success here, right? And so he's been leading guys. Cade DuPont, returner, a guy that's been told he's too small his whole life, right? He just finds a way he'll fight you to be on the field, and he's had a really good fall and early spring. Jake Haggard been phenomenal on defense. Love the way he plays third base. Big body, plays the position correctly, one-handed player, plays really good angles, and he's taken a step up in the box, in my opinion. Kind of ironed out some things, made a little bit of a swing overhaul, and really like his approach. Now it plays into what we're doing with him in the box. So really like his physicality, what he's done. Obviously Zach White got some time as a freshman last year behind the plate, so he and Aranda will both play. There's some other guys in there, returners, that I'm leaving out, but on the bump, Justin Robinson has looked really good. Lots of arm talent, has really taken care of things off the field, like we asked. Just being proactive in some things. Not that anything was wrong, but he's been great. Tubbs, left-handed pitcher out of the pen. He's been here forever. I think he played here when it was Northeast Louisiana. I think he's 30 years old. He's been phenomenal. Just a lefty coming in, and just a great, just leads the pitching staff, in the weight room, and is just a really good teammate, really good player. He loves the school, and he wants to see it get in the direction we want it to go. And then Seaver Sheets, has been really responded really well to Coach Cox and what they're doing on the mound. And so Have some returners that didn't get much action last year. Brant Corley has looked really good, left-handed pitcher on the mound. Holden Hess, a righty from New Orleans, Jesuit, has been really good on the bump as well. Just flooding the strike zone, really efficient, really good tempo that I like. And so those are some returners that have been doing well. Have some guys out of the portal. Jake Griffith came from Tampa, D2 national champion.
Sure.
Just stepped in a veteran role. Just has the heartbeat that I like on the field. Just poised, in control. Davis Mosey was a player from Wichita State, has all the tools to be successful, and is really learning how to thrive in the way that we want to play. J.C. Dermody, left-handed pitcher, also from Wichita State. I like what he's looked like on the mound. And so, listen, Dave, I'm leaving guys out on accident.
Well, you've done a really good job naming about a dozen players. I'm going to have to go back and write down what you said. You did that all off the top of your head.
Yeah.
That was really impressive. A couple of things that you mentioned that I find important. Baseball is the ultimate sport, especially when you're a hitter. It's all about how do you overcome failure, because you're going to fail 7 out of 10 times, and those are the good players. And baseball is the one sport, especially in college, size does not matter. You can be Jose Altuve and be a Hall of Fame career, and he's standing 5'5". All right, Dustin Pedroia, same type of deal. So size does not matter. Guys like usually have a chip on their shoulder. So how do you keep those guys, like you said, you had a bunch of them that you mentioned, level-headed, because you got to come back the next day if you had a bad day the day before?
Yeah, I just think they have to see their head coach kind of reflect that. And so I'll give you an example. Our first week back, the whole mission of the week was let's build back and get us back to game speed, right? And so we do a lot of things in practice that mimic the game, whether it's a controlled scrimmage or whatever it may be. We had an exceptional week. Obviously, you get 7 days in a week, and you got to practice for 6 of them. We were great. I just really liked how they came back physical that first day, the way they were filling out the uniform, the way they were moving around. I could tell there was structure over the break. Ben McGinnis, our strength coach, does an exceptional job and has buy-in from the entire group. Well, I didn't like the way we finished on that very last day. It was bad, okay, and it was a long day. It was 30 degrees, felt like, and we just didn't finish the week. That day, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And simply the conversation after, listen, these guys, this day and age, these players, like when the day is done, they're not hearing your words anymore. They want to go eat. They want to get home. They want to get treatment, whatever it may be. And head coaches, I think the ones that really understand that are the ones that, they kind of thrive. They don't always have to hear what you want to say. And they can wait till the next day. And so the conversation was, look, that wasn't good enough. If we play today, we get beat. Okay. Then if you want my honest opinion, that was last place baseball. See you tomorrow. And that was it. And so I think the next day, it was a Monday, they came back, and it was, I told our coaching staff, they need to see our energy right. This is, no different than if we lose a Friday night game in the middle of the year. We need to win that Saturday game. And I really like the way the team responded. So to answer your question, how to keep them, I think it's, you talk to them about being a mature player, turning the page, whether it's 3 for 3 night, 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. It's one pitch focus, like I said, not affected by success or failure. And I wanted our players to see our coaching staff come out with great energy. I made sure to get here early. I wanted the music blaring as they pulled up to the ballpark. I wanted the clubhouse to have all new schedules and, whatever message we had on the board for them. So, that's to answer your question, Dave. I think you got to instill that with your actions as the leader of the program. And that's the way we go about it.
Wrapping things up with Ford Pemberton, new head baseball coach with the ULM Warhawks, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, so we're not talking Omaha or Sunbelt Championship, but yet that's who you're competing against, the Coastal Carolinas and the Southern Misses. We'll see if the Cajuns can turn it around. Troy is already good. How do you step into that, knowing what the expectations are? Because it is not a one-bid league, right? There's only going to be one team going to the NCAA basketball tournament out of the Sunbelt. Sunbelt can get 2, 3, and 4 teams into that NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think you embrace it. You're going to have to you play the baseball more than anything, right? So I tell that, we say that a lot, like play the baseball, right? When the guy leaves the ball leaves the pitcher's hand, right? It's out of his control now. You have to take care of your zone discipline, your swing decision or whatever. And so, I think you embrace playing these guys. There's really good head coaches in this league. Skylar Meade and Matt Deggs, and it just, Oz over Mike Silva. This is, I embrace it to be around these guys every weekend. We have a good relationship. Seth Thibodeau, who's the associate head coach at UL Lafayette. he taught me a lot at this level. And so it's, I think you embrace it. I think, when we're talking to recruits or we're talking to to our team, why would you want to be in it? Like, why wouldn't you want to be in this? Embrace it and get into the fight. And, you just have to play the game and do what the game's asking you to do and go. Baseball, like we said, is a unique sport, just the way it's laid out. You can't give it to the same running back over and over. You can't keep attacking the same corner. You can't, keep dishing it out to the guy for the 3-pointer. There's a lineup that goes in there, and it's, you wait your turn. Just a unique sport that brings out, Coastal's right there knocking at the door of a national championship, right? And so doesn't happen in a lot of other sports, but we embrace it. I love the league. I love this region. It's I love the fan bases. I know they're going to get after us a little bit, but I think that's the great thing about the Sun Belt, and so it's a unique opportunity that I think enhances the student athlete experience here. And, we just got to play good baseball, Dave, and get this thing. I just want to see us play really, really good baseball. And I think the results will take care of themselves for the most part.
He's Ford Pemberton, new head baseball coach for the ULM Warhawks, hopping on Locked On Sunbelt. Really appreciate your time, Coach. Best of luck this season and with this upcoming storm. Hopefully everybody stays safe, and hopefully we'll catch up with you sometime during the year. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you for having me, Dave.